I'm Mark Ramsey, thrilled to be with the great and fabulous Yaman Koskin. Yaman is CEO of Yaman Air. Yaman, welcome.
Thank you, Mark.
Yaman, you got to tell me, first of all, before we get into this topic, because it's such a great topic of why great creative makes audio sexy. That's a sexy topic, you got to admit.
No doubt.
Tell me about Yaman Air. What do you do?
Yamanair Creative owns and operates a couple of services that provide strategic creative to radio operators across the country. One is called Cashfire Creative. The other one is called SpecBite. SpecBite is represented by Compass Media Networks, and companies like Connoisseur Media uses them, and others are joining it fast. Cashfire Creative has been around about 8 years, and we have CBS, Town Square, Saga Communications, Alpha Media, Cherry Creek, and others. So we're in about 300 markets, and that's what the Air does.
Okay, great. So the theme is how great creative makes audio sexy. I guess that begins with kind of with probing the premise, which is why is it important for audio to be sexy?
Well, for the same reason, I think it's important for Rihanna to dress right in order to showcase how gorgeous she truly is. I mean, imagine seeing Rihanna on stage in an absolutely horrendous, baggy outfit with the worst imaginable makeup on and a hairdo. You can even appreciate her beauty, although she is gorgeous and she probably still look hot through all that. But it's so important when understanding the power of audio, and what makes it sexy is when audio is used as directed.
Because I think also there's an element of kind of been there, done that about audio that strikes a lot of people, both in the audience and in the buying community, and, and a feeling like, well, it's been there for 100 years. Tell me something I don't already know about audio. And you're saying audio can be sexy.
Well, you make a great point, as you often do, Mark. There are a number of things that's been around for hundreds of years. One of them is, saying "I love you" to somebody. The other one is taking a walk on the beach. There are certain eating, haircut. There are things that have been around a long time that should never be dismissed because they've been around a long time. In fact, they should be embraced, and they should be held really close, especially something like audio, which is one of our five senses, and it's clinically proven that our emotions are triggered first by audio, then all the other senses. Audio is the biggest power we have in radio. And again, when used as directed, it makes money.
Okay, let's talk about that. So if great creative can make audio sexy, then the obvious follow-up question is, how do I develop great creative? What are the rules of thumb in order to make creative great?
When we talk about creative on radio, obviously we're specifically referring to stop sets. And I've often looked at stop sets like you're having this great party at your house, private residence, that's your radio station, and all your guests are your close friends, your P1s, and then suddenly the door opens and somebody comes in that you don't know, but you're open. You're willing to embrace and accept and say hello. Well, the first words that come out of that person's mouth, I mean, how they behave and how they're dressed will either allow them to blend right into your party, into your content seamlessly, and you like them, and you'll want to keep them. Or if they're really obnoxious and they offend people within the first 5 seconds, and then you throw them out, and on the way out they go ahead and piss on your lawn, that's when every time that door opens, now you're really paranoid. Okay, who's coming in? Am I going to like them? Am I going to hate them? And that's how our stop sets work. The party's interrupted, whether it's spoken word or music. Somebody comes in and says something. Wouldn't it be nice for them to say something that inspires us instead of pitching us, which we're all sick and tired of?
Well, let's probe that for a second then. What is the difference in terms of practical application from inspiring versus pitching? Because the conventional thinking, I'm sure, would be, well, we have a spot. A spot is advertising. We got to advertise our product. Here come our benefits. Here comes our story. Here comes the pitch. Here's the phone number. In fact, I'll repeat it 4 times. So how do we get from that to inspiration?
The critical component here that I have been reminding myself for a very long time is it's very easy to cross into that area of being a creative prima donna and go, oh my gosh, all these spots suck. Look at them, just the way you just described it. Most of them are like that. But guess what? If I talk to a client and a radio rep, we're good friends, and they've been doing business together for a long time in, I don't know, in Tyler or in Tri-Cities, their spot may sound just like that, and they have been selling cars just like that for the longest time. So I say to you, if the creative works for for the dynamics of your market and your business and that particular radio station, congratulations, you are running the best creative in the world. So creative isn't necessarily, oh, it's got to be so chic and so cool, and how many awards do I have on my shelf? That's unfortunately the misdirected creative. The right creative is the creative that gets client results. Is there a better way to do it than the way you and I just kind of mocked it? Of course. I mean, we couldn't do this 20 years ago, but we can now. We can inspire instead of inform, because when we inspire them, they will want to be informed. And there's this thing called the internet. They can go there and get all the information they want without us having to tell them our phone numbers, and we're across the street from blah blah, and we're open Sundays, and we've been owned, family and operated, and all that stuff.
Okay.
So,
well, let's dissect a little more of what great creative is by looking at the opposite. I mean, what's bad creative? And if you can just touch on how you would distinguish the bad from the great. And then I think the follow-up question is, why is there still so much bad out there?
Yeah. Well, I think bad creative is creative that's off target. The best way to really explain this to anybody in or outside the business is, Mark, how did you and I meet our wives? How did that relationship start? Wasn't there a courtship? Wasn't there some period there where we knew what to say, the right things to say at the right time, and clearly so did they, and that's how that relationship kicked off, and that's when we felt like, oh my gosh, that's my soulmate. If we convert the blueprint that we've been using traditionally in terms of, hey, let's establish the marketing objective, and then let's see, who are we talking, what are they doing while we're talking to them, and when are we doing it? Just throw all that out and say, dude, what are you selling? It's insurance, or it's cars, you're a day spa. Okay, who are we talking to? All right, them. Well, what would we say to them that would make them like us? The same mentality that we had, because we were so engaged and kind of inspired by our spouses and our partners when we met them, that we wanted to say the right things to them, not because we were getting ready to show them a PowerPoint presentation about our skills and our income and our ambitions and our assets, but it was to inspire them to like us more because we like them. That kind of genuine approach is good creative.
So consumers want to patronize brands that are likable and relevant, and it's not necessarily just a listing of facts. Let's go through some of those bullet points you gave me earlier, because you started detailing, here are the things that are common to so-called bad creative.
Right. Bad creative, at first, it's stuff that you and I, again, know all too well. Listing features instead of talking about benefits. Trying to shove too much copy, 60 seconds worth of copy into a 30, and it's totally okay. We'll time compress it, and we'll figure out a way to play it. We do it all the time. This constant conversation that well, it's not even a conversation, it's more like a monologue, that we talk down at people and assume all the time pretty much that they're not that bright. So we need to repeat things because in our heads we think that's how radio works best. You need to repeat it. No. Yes, repeat frequency, absolutely necessary in terms of running the units throughout the schedule, but not within that unit. You got a 30-second spot, write 20 seconds worth of copy, say what you need to say in a way that's real, leverageable, that 100% meets the client's marketing objective, and get out.
How do you deal with a client who is insistent about certain things? I want my phone number to be in the spot, or I want, I want to repeat something several times. I mean, I get confounded when I hear spots, for example, some of the per inquiry stuff that says, call this phone number and leave your email. there seems to be a lot of stuff in spots that are repeated over and over that aren't really inspirational. Why is that stuff still there?
Well, because you have two kinds of salespeople. One who will say, "Oh, absolutely, you're right. Yep, let's do that. All right, great. So here's where you sign." And then there's the one, and that first seller is the seller. By the way, it could be a killer seller, top performer in the company for now. In 2 years, they'll go into pharmaceutical sales. 2 years after that, they'll be in insurance. The ones who are career sellers in radio are the ones, first and foremost, love radio. They're passionate about their radio stations. They're proud of their radio stations. They are P1s. Mm-hmm. They listen to their radio stations. They're the ones who are not interested in high-fiving each other because they just closed the deal for the month. They're the ones who high-five each other because they just built a relationship. In fact, the ones, I'm sure you've heard in the sales corridors, they'll always say, "Hey, I closed an annual. It's an annual." I always say, forget about celebrating an annual, celebrate a perennial. Mm-hmm. Put in that extra sweat equity right from the get-go, pay attention to the strategy, be sure that you recommend the right creative to them, and watch what happens.
So if likability is so important and if inspiration is so important, what is the best way to achieve both of those things in creative?
Well, every brand, no matter what it is, local plumber down the street, car dealerships that spends $500,000 a year on radio, or your Fortune 500 companies that does nothing but branding on the air. Every brand has an emotional angle. And who are we talking to? Who listens to radio? I don't see my dog doing it. It's humans. Mm-hmm. If we're talking to humans, then all we have to do is talk to their hearts and not to their heads, because people don't make buying decisions with their heads. They make them with their hearts and then justify it with their heads. And when we earlier, Mark, talked about the sexy space that we call audio space that's growing, and companies like CBS launching podcasts Go Play It, and everybody else is joining in, the space is so conducive to allow us to talk to people's hearts. And when we talk to people's hearts, we always get results. Always, without exception. So the long answer to your short question is, first, educate the seller. That's where it begins. Educate the seller in understanding the importance of the creative. Mm-hmm. Then give that seller the authority, transfer that authority to the seller so they can then transfer it to the client. Because the more authority the seller has, the less micromanagement they will get from the client on the creative process. And that's when we all win.
All right, Yaman Koskin is the CEO of Yaman Air. Yaman, thank you so much for your wisdom today about inspiration and likability and appealing to the heart. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Mark.